Hi everybody, my name is Terence as Von Higginbottom for the channel HeelvsBabyface. And it's been brought to my attention that last week I took the mickey extensively out of Activision Blizzard, and that was deemed unfair. I listened to these people, and hearing their arguments, I absolutely concur. I shouldn't have been taking the mickey out of Activision Blizzard alone. I should have been taking the mickey out of Activision Blizzard, EA, and the shill media all at the same time. So in today's video, we're going to make up for that. Hi everybody, it's Az here from HeelvsBabyface. So we're seeing a familiar picture over here from what we've seen last week. The stock price for Activision Blizzard plummeting rather drastically. And after the course of the weekend, I've talked to some people who are more market-minded than I, and they've had a very interesting take on this, stating that this actually is going against market trends and isn't something that is specific to the technology industry or the gaming industry. This is very much a reaction to things like the quarter earnings call and also BlizzCon. On top of that, there's another company that's going through something very similar, EA, and we'll deal with them very shortly because I think it's highly unfair that we only laugh at Activision Blizzard. But there is a distinct moral to this story, and the moral I'll get out of the way immediately because I will be repeating it multiple times in the video, and that is know who your audience is, not who you would like them to be. So just to have a quick recap, we see over here the build up to BlizzCon and BlizzCon, the steep drop off after BlizzCon, which I think can be attributed to the Diablo Immortal fiasco. We then have a steadying off because of it, and then we have the Q3 earnings call, and we fall right off a cliff. Now, despite when it opened up on the Friday, this desperate attempt to claw some of the losses back, between the start and the end, there is simply 1 cent, and that is all. And so here we are, Monday after the weekend has gone by, and the price is still going down, nearly another $1 and 1.5 almost percentage in drop off. Ouch. But this can be attributed not just to Diablo Immortal, but to many things. Despite the way that Blizzard fluffed up the earnings call for when we read it and when the shareholder reads it, when the analysts tore it apart and went through all the details, it was clear that there were numerous things which weren't quite as rosy as Activision Blizzard were painting out. There was a distinct drop-off for the third quarter in a row in engagement with audience. Every company across the board was losing people, and Activision Blizzard themselves went down by several million. One can only imagine how many of those several, I think approximately 7 for Blizzard, were actually people playing Battle for Azeroth, for instance. But things were not looking good. Transactions across the board were actually down. Hearthstone sales down. Engagement down. Although they do show these fluff numbers of we've now hit X number of this and X number of that. Call of Duty Black Ops 4 didn't hit expectations, although did very well indeed. And then, of course, we had Battle for Azeroth and their distinct reaction to Battle for Azeroth. And I think from what we can see from the figures as well, people leaving Battle for Azeroth. It was all in all very bad news, this Q3, when it was boiled down to its common denominator. And this, from the shareholder, showed why. And to me, it is a distinct matter of Blizzard not understanding its audience. And I think it goes a little bit further, not caring about the audience. Because when you are floating your company on the stock market, you are not beholden to the gamer, you're beholden to the shareholder. And so a company stops making video games for gamers and starts making video games for shareholders. And that is when a distinct disconnect can happen. Now, this isn't something that's new. It's something which has been happening for a little while now. But things have escalated. And the one game that I haven't mentioned so far, because I've left it for its own little special segment now, of course, is Destiny 2. Destiny 2 is a game that is bolstered by some of the best shooting gameplay mechanics out there, if not the best. I think Bungie shooting mechanics are second to none. I think they're fantastic. And when you physically play Destiny 2, it's cool. The shooting's cool, the reactions are cool, the AI of the mobs, it's all good stuff. But Destiny 2 was built very specifically to pull people to the Eververse transaction store. And then on top of that, they insulted their customer base with the first two expansions. One of them almost pushing everybody again to the Eververse store. The Christmas event last year pushing everybody to the Eververse store. It was just such an overtly greedy system that people who weren't happy with the actual physical content in the game, myself included, had actually bowed out long before. And only hardcore Destiny players, and the hardcorest of the hardcore, were sticking around. And although Forsaken has addressed some of the player concerns because it was built around player concerns, when really it was built as a damage control expansion, not around player concerns at all, it still hasn't done anywhere close to what they wanted it to. And Destiny 2, a franchise which should be a market leader, is nowhere and is actually dragging the company down. This is what happens when a game is built for a shareholder and not a gamer. We're becoming too wise, we're becoming too clued into this, and we're just not accepting it. But EA, EA, halfway through this year, around about Mayish time, EA decided to show off their latest and greatest, Battlefield 5. And this is so bizarre. EA are the kings of churning out annual franchises. FIFA, Madden, the NBA. It's just stuff which gets churned out the Battlefields almost annual. Just franchises that come out every year and people just eat them up by the bucket load. I personally don't understand it, but that is just me. But this year, they decided to take a completely different tact when it came to their Battlefield franchise. Now, Battlefield 1 had been received very well indeed. I purchased it. I loved it. I thought it was a great game. It really did give that distinct feel, even though it's a video game, of the sort of warfare that would have gone on in World War One. The going over the top, the huge numbers, the basic armory. It was a very, very engaging game to play, and I have churned many an hour into Battlefield 1 and loved it while doing so. So when the news came out that they were going to be shifting their attention from World War 1 to World War 2, sure. COD eventually had to go back to go forward. Their futuristic space Game of Thrones Jon Snow just absolutely miserably failing. So they took it all back to World War II, and that bolstered up the player base again. It took things back to basics. And of the thought of Battlefield moving their game into World War II and the scale of the Battlefield games, and more importantly, the slightly more realistic take that Battlefield games have to the run and gun of Call of Duty. 2 first-person shooters, but with very different takes on the first-person shooting genre. I was very, very interested indeed. And then they released the trailer. And yes, we have the woman with the bionic arm. But that isn't what perturbed me about the trailer. Because I don't have an issue playing as a woman or having women in games. I think people that do are crazy, to be honest with you. I've been playing Tomb Raider games for 21 years, 22 years. Final Fantasy 13, the protagonist is Lightning. Now, I have no problem playing as Lightning. I thought she was dull as dishwater, but I've got no problem with playing as Lightning. I've got no problem playing with females in games at all. And I think, to be perfectly frank, most people don't either. Yeah, there might be a troll community that go rah, 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 but ultimately I don't think people that much bothered about whether to play a male protagonist or a female protagonist. No, the thing that got me about Battlefield 5 is I was watching the trailer and asking myself, what the hell is going on here? Because suddenly the more gritty and realistic Battlefield franchise had suddenly just turned into a what the hell did I just watch? It was ridiculous. It was absolutely ridiculous. It was more in line with a Call of Duty. It was more in line with some sort of almost steampunkish idea of what war might be. But it certainly wasn't in the Battlefield mode. It was just redonkulous. Explosions everywhere. Vehicles smashing through buildings, people just jumping out of windows from top levels, landing absolutely fine, by the way. Women's with bionic arms getting shot downstairs, and then next minute they're outside, absolutely fine, shooting. I have no idea what was going on. And I was just very kind of confused about that whole trailer as an entity. And then there was the pushback from people about the woman. There was the woman talk. Why is there a woman on the front lines? This is not how it was in World War II. Yes, there were women in the French resistance. Yes, there were sniper groups. Yes, there were they were women in the war. But this was if this was to happen, this would be almost a serendipitous occasion, especially with one arm. Even though I think pictures were shown that this bionic arm did actually exist in the world. Put it this way, it was very much trying to shoehorn a female in to a sausage party. Now, this is where we're going to get to a little bit of a trigger warning for people. Whereas I have absolutely no problems with females in games, at all. And I have no problem with a female in Battlefield, to be perfectly honest with you. When a company tries to tick a box because they want justice points or they want to virtue signal out there, we are woke, look at us, we got women's on the front line, that to me is disingenuous. That is not putting them there for the right reason. And therefore, it comes across as phony and fake. And I think you kind of deserve the backlash that you get. And if you actually read through the comments section of the video, as it was heavily downvoted, I don't think to the scale of Diablo Immortal, but it was heavily downvoted. A lot of the comments about the women's are actually troll comments. And they're funny. If you just read them for face value for what they are just taking the mickey. Oh, I never knew that there was a bionic woman in the war fighting against black German soldiers. You know, there were absolutely ridiculous comments out there. And you just read them, you just have to laugh because they are clearly exaggerating comments purely to troll. But troll in the funnest form, not malicious. Troll to give people a laugh, to give people a giggle of the situation. And this, to me, is, again, another clear indication of a company not understanding its audience or not caring about its audience. And this is where we have the overlap with Activision Blizzard. There are absolutely men and women playing video games. Are they to the stats that people want to put out there? I don't know. What I will say is, sure, there is a diversity within the gaming industry, but that doesn't mean that all genres and all games have an identical split. It doesn't mean, for instance, that Battlefield has a 50-50 ratio of men to women. Men prefer certain things, women prefer other things. And there's always going to be an overlap across the board, somewhere along the line. But what that percentage actually is, I don't think is anywhere close to what the woke brigade would make you think. What do I personally believe the ratio of male players to female players is in a Battlefield game? I would probably say it's likely 95% male, maybe 5% female. Somewhere along those lines. Now, of course, I have no stats to back this up. This is a gut feeling. But my gut feeling is based around playing hundreds of hours in these games and seeing how many male players I come across versus how many female players I come across. And I think 95 is actually being a little bit generous. So you have a sausage party of a game and you're trying to score woke points. You are going to get a backlash whether you like it or not. And also, before we bring in morality, it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. It doesn't matter if the morality of this is right or wrong. It doesn't matter if it's wrong that people are backlashing to this sort of thing going on the screen. It doesn't matter. It's just what is going to happen when you have a specifically male-orientated product. We can debate the wheres and the what fors and the whys all day long. You're going to get pushed back to it. So realistically, when you make a product that is predominantly for a sausage party, make sausages. Don't make chicken. If you get where I'm coming from. There's nothing wrong with targeting your target audience. That's why it's very specifically called a target audience. There is nothing wrong with saying, hey, do you know what? This game is played mainly by female players, whatever that game may be. Console game, PC game, mobile game. There's nothing wrong with saying, right, this is a predominantly female-orientated game. Target them as a female group. Although you're going to have some overlap, that doesn't matter. Cater to your audience. Make your audience happy. If the product is good enough, if the product is fun enough, and if the product has good variety, then sure, other people may find their way into your franchise. But ultimately, if they don't want to be in your franchise and want to be elsewhere, there's nothing wrong with catering to that target audience then. So we've done some serious stuff now. I think it's time to start laughing at EA. So whereas we've seen what's been going on with Activision, we really need to see what's also been going on with EA. And if we just bring this up here, oh my goodness me. Oh my goodness me. This is a completely different story in itself. We have a 1 year gap here of trade. A 1 year gap, a 1 year of trade with EA. So things were kind of going along rather nicely at the beginning of the year. Steady growth, maintaining itself, absolutely good stuff here. We're going through quarterly earnings, and then we've got growth going up here. This is where Battlefield 5 is announced. And this is actually very important to see, because although there was the Troll Brigade that came out and was just like, why the Whammons in my game? And I don't think it was as bad as people make it out. People were questioning a lot of the validity of the franchise. Like I said, Battlefield is a very grounded franchise, and the whole thing came across as a little bit bizarre, as if it wasn't based in the reality that the previous games have been. But you still saw a sharp jump up in the franchise. Because although people took issue with maybe the validity of the authenticity of the date, although some people took umbrage maybe with the female orientation of it, it didn't matter. It ultimately didn't matter. It was a Battlefield game, and people thought it would still play like a Battlefield game, and Battlefield players are really there for that. And so it got a good reaction in terms of stock market. The new Battlefield game is announced. It's gonna sell because Battlefield has a good target audience, and although there's a little bit of this and that going on, as everything does in gaming, it will ultimately die down and steady itself out. So there's a nice zonk up there, and it holds its own, and then we have more. We have more growth. We go through another quarterly earnings, and things are okay-ish enough with the investor that they deem the company worthy enough to put their money into. And the stock price rises up slightly. So then we have a little bit of a drop-off here. So what happens here? Well, let me get my trusty block pad out here and go through a couple of things now. Mid-June. There's this kind of a line, pretty much, around about mid-June-ish time. Patrick Sodland says something which now, looking back, and even then we knew was bad, has crippled the company in terms of stock price. Patrick Sodland is being interviewed about Battlefield 5. And he's being questioned about the authenticity of the trailer. And he's being questioned about the authenticity of women within this situation. And Patrick Sodland comes out with the line, deal with it or don't buy it. The kind of phrasing which we now place the mantle of get woke, go broke. He went there. He went and did it. He antagonized the customer base. This is one thing as a company you don't do. I've just spent the last goodness knows how many minutes telling about targeting your audience and catering for your audience. Not being ashamed that you have identified who your audience is and unreservedly producing a product for that audience. So what does Patrick do? Pisses off that audience. And we're now in an era where we are becoming, as gamers, much more savvy to the business practices that are going on around us. Whereas before, we were all willing to trust companies and support them with these extra financial microtransactions or add-ons, bolt-ons, whatever it may be, because we believe as gamers we're supporting the company and they're looking after us and we're going to get good stuff. And then you realize that you're actually getting milked. and taken advantage of, and you start getting a little bit more cynical as time goes on. But when you directly antagonize your audience, oh boy, things are going to go very, very badly wrong. And on top of that, the earnings call comes out, and it's revealed that there has been a drop-off in sales for EA, and there has been a drop-off in revenue for EA. And then it's also announced that Battlefield 5 is trending at 85% below Call of Duty's Black Ops 4 pre-orders. Patrick Söderlund's antagonistic behaviour caused multiple people to go, well, screw you. You say you don't want Whammons, don't buy it. We won't buy it. Not necessarily because they're against the female aspect, but because Patrick poked the bear. He did the stupidest thing that you could possibly do. He almost gave the customer base an ultimatum. Hey, customer base, people who've been loyal to us for years and years and years, people who have got a few questions maybe about the direction of this version of Battlefield, buy it or don't. Okay? Just on sheer principle, don't buy it. And I'm not personally purchasing Battlefield 5 myself because of the Whammons? No. Because of the bionic arm? No. Even because of the... We're not going to do that whole segment again. Not because of the complete craziness of the explosions and flying cars landing on people and all that kind of stuff. No. I'm just not buying Battlefield 5, even though I purchased Battlefield 1 and loved it, off the grounds that when a company tells me, like it or lump it, in today's day and age, I'll lump it. I'll take your lump it option. I will cancel my pre-order and I won't purchase your product. I won't support a company who treats their customer like an enemy, who treats their customer like an antagonist. I won't support these companies anymore. I'm sick and tired of it, just as a personal rule of thumb. And then, after that Söderlund incident, he leaves EA. That's weird. Why would he leave EA after billions of dollars are suddenly wiped from the market value when he turns around and tells people, deal with it, buy it, or don't? He miraculously leaves the company just a couple of weeks later. And then comes the announcement after they realise that the share price, it's not the share price, sorry, the pre-orders are 85%, trucking 85% below what Call of Duty Black Ops 4 is, when they were pretty much going to go toe-to-toe with them. They blinked. EA blinked. And they delayed Battlefield 5. And it's really for no other reason than they couldn't go up against Call of Duty Black Ops. They would be annihilated. And sales would be terrible. And so they delay it to allow people to play Black Ops 4, hopefully wear themselves out a bit, and then release Battlefield when it's died down a little bit and they might capture themselves some more sales. Billions more go off the share price. And although we have a little attempt at growth back, EA falls off a cliff. And why does EA fall off a cliff? Because it has no other IPs to really announce. It's got nothing. It had nothing in backup. It had nothing in support. And therefore, when you have nothing, you've got no sales and you have diminished revenue. You now have a game which has been pushed back because you're trying to maximize the sales on it. And you see a company that was up here in July. By September, they're 23% down by here. And then, boosh. Complete and utterly off a cliff. 147 up here. 86, 87 down here. Billions and billions of dollars. So going back to what I said before, the moral of the story, knowing your customer base. This is about companies, gaming companies, who are producing games for shareholders. And when you're producing games for shareholders, you are complete and utterly losing track of who you are meant to be focusing your games on. The gamer itself. And so when you are churning it full of these microtransactions, when people are becoming savvy to these egregious business practices, you get Destiny 2. You get a game that was built, designed, and pushed as a shareholder cash grab. And the player base rejected it. Screw you. Screw you. There's too much choice out there now. We're not forced to play this game. Your game isn't so good that it just has to be played. No. So EA and the story of how Battlefield 5, if they'd just kept their mouths shut, maybe listened a little bit to their audience, maybe tried to tweak a few things here and there across the board as things were looking okay, but no. You had to antagonize the very people who are buying your product. And where are you now? This isn't a market trend. This is a story of failure. This is a story of not understanding your player base, not understanding your customer base, or simply not caring about them. And this is where you end up. And this is where I think AAA is going to end up. Because when you are making games for shareholders and not gamers, you are eventually going to fall. Because they're going to get sick of you. They're going to get sick of your predatory practices. They're going to get sick and tired of your shill media. And let's just address them for a moment. Because they are also responsible for these things here. Why? Because they white knight the gaming industry. They come running to the defense of these publishers because they want to curry favor with the EAs and the Activisions and the Ubisofts and all these companies because they're the ones who advertise on their site. They're the ones like GameSpot who give them the exclusives to put onto their YouTube channels. They're the ones that invite them to various events. They're the ones who conduct the interviews with them so they can make their articles. They are bought and paid for. And yet, they attack the gamer. They attack you and I. And they write their articles calling us toxic and entitled and man babies and all these kind of things. And what do we do in response? We cancel our pre-orders. You want to call me toxic and entitled because I have an opinion about something that may differ from yours? That's what happens. The gaming media are also contributing to these companies' downfalls by white knighting them. They're antagonizing the gamer. They're antagonizing the people who actually shell out the money. These people don't shell out money. Games media don't buy games. They get them given to them for free to make reviews on. They don't do any of this. They get flown out to places. They're not spending money like you or I. They're getting these things on the DL. And so it's no skin off their nose because they're going to get their product to do, and they're going to get their product to review, and they're going to get their article up on the website. And so the more they antagonize the gamer about a specific game, the more that gamer is going to turn around and go, cancel pre-order. So they are a contributing factor here as anyone else. They're as guilty as anyone else because they have one loyalty, and that is to the publisher. And so you're literally creating a them and us. And what's more, we don't care about the games media anymore. This is very apparent what you are to the industry. Most of you don't even want to be in it. You're failed journalists. You can't get proper jobs in the areas that you want. And so you feel as if you're taking a step down. This is beneath you. And you're dealing with an audience that's beneath you. This audience doesn't care about you. We don't care about you. Leave the industry. Leave. Go. No one will miss you. No one will care. Go preach your crap elsewhere is all I can really say. EA, Activision Blizzard, the AAA gaming industry in general, they're going to be the bearers of their own downfall. When you have the model of developer, publisher, shareholder, then gamer, it's simply not sustainable. Because the shareholder is never going to be satisfied with the amount of money made. You hit one target, they want more. You don't hit that target, the share price drops as they sell their shares and lose faith in the company. So the publisher developer then has to make more aggressive and egregious microtransactions to push towards the gamer. And then the gamer feels exploited and ripped off because they're being exploited and ripped off. And then they leave the franchise to go elsewhere looking for a company that actually respects them. Which then has the knock-on effect, of course, back to the shareholder because the franchise loses people, they don't generate the money, they sell the shares, the price tumbles, it's a house of cards and it's going to fall down around them. I don't think you quite realise how much power you have as a gamer to affect change. I know at times we feel inconsequential because we have these billion-dollar businesses literally doing what they want. But all it takes is one fool to say, deal with it or don't buy it. And that's our perfect excuse to say, okay, we won't buy it. The power is now ours. And then you see the knock-on effect that has. The pre-orders tumble. The rivals go way ahead of their product. And so the share price starts to decrease rapidly as it's not meeting their projected expectations. And then said idiots leave the company a couple of weeks later, but it's too late. Because you now have to blink because you can't go toe-to-toe with your rival and you delay the release of your game, which then loses even more confidence with your shareholder and the price continues to drop and drop. And suddenly the forecast, which was probably going to be pretty decent, becomes very bleak indeed. It only takes one fool on stage to say, do you guys not have phones? Because they are completely oblivious to their core audience who are right in front of them. Which then makes their audience question, why am I supporting a company who doesn't even understand who their core audience truly is? Because they are so blinkered by appealing to the East, appealing to kids with their monetizations and their microtransactions because they need to build up those projections and forecasts to keep the shareholder happy. It just comes at the expense of their core audience. It's not a sustainable business model. It's a business model that will fall apart at the seams. So I hope you enjoyed the vid. If you did, do get a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel. Follow me on social media and Twitch for live streaming. Links They're in the description box down below. And I'll be back with some more stuff very soon. You take care. Bye for now.